Hello, Abeka. How are you today? First, I want to welcome you to the show and thank you for taking the time this evening and especially agree to share your story. We talk a bit in our call earlier, Abeka, is about how your journey has evolved over time and you have involved a lot with journalism and with newspapers and media. So we will talk about that on the second part of this podcast. I want to start with where you come from. How was your upbringing? What values, what culture you come from, what values you carry with you. So there's a lot to cover about you from where you come from. So how about we start with that?
Wow, thank you very much, Cam. Really appreciated and the opportunity to be here with you. When it's come to introducing myself, I'm always difficult part of it because I call myself the son of Africa. And the secret behind it is that I find myself in one way or another connected to the East Africa, that is Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. But both my parents are coming from Kenya, and we are what I will call Kenya is a little bit multicultural country. We have around 47 different languages. So that's make us more special. But globally, we are known for athletes, and we are proud. In Olympics, we were the first African country with gold medals. So we are proud of that. I come from, I would say, extremes of Kenya. So my mom come from the coastal side, and then my dad come from the western side, which is also at the lake. So my mom come from a place called Mombasa, and then my dad come from both sides of a place called Kisumu. But unfortunately, I lost mom at a tender age, so I was raised by more of society, and that made me understand the societal or the communal importance on growing up. So I grew up as a child of the society, and that is also in my education. But at the same time, you find yourself living with different people. So the aunts, the uncles, and those kind of. So you are a child of everyone until when responsibilities are now transferred to you as an adult.
Nice. So you talk about Olympics and Kenya athletes. Why why there is a lot of Olympic level athletes come from Kenya? Do you know the reason?
The thing is, I don't think it's only most African countries or Kenya having gold medals, but I think we have been really doing good when it comes to the long distance, especially in athletics. But we also have some good footballers. We have good players in. We have some guys who have made names for cricket. We have also have guys who made name for football. We have guys who made their names in other parts of sports disciplines. But why the secret, I think, and the secret is nowadays known because of the high altitude we have in the Rift Valley side. So most of the athletes which come from that side can train for long and go for long distances. But in my second country, I was proud also when we won golden marathon, which only happened to be an African thing. But still, we are proud because she's a, a Dutch, African Dutch, whichever way you want to bring it. But I think the secret is the terrain we have, because you find most of the athletes come from the Rift Valley region. Because of the high altitude within that region, it makes them to accumulate very well when they go for a long distance. Having said that, I see we are also doing well in short races. For example, we had one of the guys, Omanyala, who was doing well in. Nobody ever expected a Kenyan to run into 100 meters.
So how was Rebecca? How was your childhood in Kenya?
My childhood, I will say, was a mixture of most of the things, because sometimes we go through a lot as a child without knowing the impact until when we are grown ups, is when you realize that, oh, I was passing through something. So, as a child growing up, unfortunately or fortunately, I'm the last born in a family of four remaining, but we were around 10. Some of them have gone back, died, but we are four remaining. And being the last born, you expected to enjoy most of the things as the last born, they think. But unfortunately, I didn't have that privilege. As I said prior in our introduction, that I lost mom when I was at a very tender age. So we, after the death of my mom, I think we kind of disintegrated and scattered all over. So I grew up staying with different people and doing different things. So at some point, I was like a shamba boy, somebody who will take care of the cows, who look around the homestead for someone, but at the same time going to school. And because the educational system of what we have in Kenya is, it used to be 844. So you do 8 years in lower primary, and then you do 4 years in upper secondary, and then you do another 4 years in university, depending on the kind of course you do. But sometimes if you do engineering or medical, this times it might stay longer. So I remember as a child, I used to stay in different parts. I would be in Nairobi. Sometimes I will be in the village. Sometimes I will be in my aunt in uh, East African surrounding countries, for example, Tanzania and Uganda. And at some point, I would stay alone. And I think one of the parts which remains, and you remember in our conversation when we were talking, I told you, right, I'm writing a book about my journey. So one of the parts which remain very vividly in my mind is when I remember staying alone. I think it was between the age of 7 to 9 there. I can't remember very well. But and then I used to go to the construction sites. And why does that stick into my mind for so long is like I didn't see it at that moment, and I thought it was just a normal thing. But if I look at it, and I would go to a construction site, and these guys will give me money, which will take care of me for the whole week until we go back again, because I was going to school. So they will give me around 75 Kenya shillings. That was by then around €1 or more. But that amount of money will take good care of me for the whole week. And I wasn't doing much for them. I was just, oh, can you bring the hammer? Can you bring this and this? So I was more or less just a handyman at the work site. But what's taken to my mind, the favor they were doing for me and the love they had for me, because they would remind me, don't forget, Saturday we have this construction in this side. Don't forget, this day we have this and this. So I really appreciate that. And not only the advice of not forgetting to go to work, but they also advise don't forget to go to school. So they knew the value as much as people might not have given them that respect of the kind of job they were doing, because those are kind of jobs people in Africa don't tend to think. If you are a farmer, if you are maybe a masonry, or you're a carpenter, or it look seen as a low kind of job, but they value education, and that is something which takes into my mind a lot. Like they would keep on reminding me to go to school, but also don't forget to come to work, because they know if I don't work, I won't get something to sustain me. So that was a very good upbringing. I really appreciate that. And the other thing which was mostly happening is that at the age, I remember, there a certain stage you reach whereby in high school you think you know a lot. So at one point I was expelled from school, not because we fought or anything, but I remember we used to play football, and I was a very good footballer. And then we strike because the school couldn't. We were supposed to go to another level, in provincial level, but the school couldn't afford that. So they say, okay, we can only support girl team. I think maybe because football you have to carry more than 25 to a number, but girl was just a netball team, which is around 14 people. So they go with what is easier to manage. And then the school decided to strike. The boys decided to strike. But the fact that I was now the school captain, I bear the responsibility. So I was sent back at home. And by then, my uncle who was taking care of my educational course told me, like, you know what? At this point, me, I'm done. I can't do much. So you sort out yourself. And he sent me back to my dad. And then when I went to my dad, he told me a funny thing that, oh, if you're a grown man now, so you can start a family. The following day, my aunt came with a wife for me. And I was like, okay. Yeah. So that was also a turning point for me. Like it was the norm for the people in the village. If you reach a certain age, they have this assumption that it will keep you grounded. but it was a decision I made and I said no.
How old were you, Becca, when you get the proposal or the wife came?
I was 16, 15 there.
Okay. And what did you study?
Yeah, so after that, I had a privilege to go to college, and I did certificate because the upbringing and getting that direct into campus was not easy. So I did a certificate, and then later on, my aunt tried her best and got me opportunity to do media. So when I started journalism, I was at first, I remember being like the remote in the family. So when people are watching news, the black and white of those years, I will be the one turning stations. But it was only two stations. So there was the national broadcaster, and then there was one station which is fully football, and it was called Football Made in Germany. And yeah, my uncle will pretend to be watching, but he does it 5 minutes and then he's gone. And when you switch it off, he doesn't hear the voice. Who has switched off the TV? Who has checked the station? So I was a remote and I thought I would be a newscaster. But when I started getting into media, I developed this interest about how does things work. I was not interested into the face, but I wanted to be at the back. So I specialize in media production and the technical aspect of it. And I grew. Then I did my bachelor. After that, I had an opportunity to work for different local media. That I did that in Uganda. Then I worked for local media. I grew because I think the advantage I had on other people was most of the people were interested in being in front than being at the back. So having the advantage of understanding both the back and in front gave me a great opportunity to grow as a person. And I thank God I had a privilege to work for some of the best international and local media houses.
And were you married by that time at the age of 16 or you refused?
No, no. In fact, I thank God because my uncle instilled discipline in me, and there are incidences which happened, and I think that was also a turning point. So, growing up, it was the incidents when HIV and AIDS prevalence was globally becoming a thing in Africa, and people were being stigmatized mostly. So I remember one day having a conversation with my uncle after I was expelled from school and went back, and he told me two things that, where you are, jokingly, that now you have become a man and you can have chances of having a child. But the problem is that you only have two options. You can have a child with a child, and you are a child, and also you can get it. And so that is something which stick into my mind. And I thank God I married when I was strong, mature, and open enough to understand what marriage is all about. So I married in my 30s, which was a really good thing, I think, at the moment.
Before moving out of Kenya, um, you had a good life there. You studied family there. You work in, some big media houses. How was generally the life in Kenya, and why did you decide to move out?
Okay, I think my life in Kenya was a transition, or I will call progressive. I come from a very humble background, and I thank God for that. And people sometimes don't understand when I say it's sometimes losing my mom at a tender age prepared me for the market because I found myself a little bit disciplined on a few things, and that is something I always carry with me. I remember where I came from and what I want to do in life and where I want to go. So I have a dream and I wanted to achieve that dream. So working in media opened a lot of doors for me. And one of the thing is traveling globally, not only in Africa, but I also travel outside of Africa. And having that discipline and enjoying what I was doing also made people to see who I am and opportunities prevail themselves. So traveling out of Africa was more of a opportunity which prevailed itself. I was working for AP, which is Associated Press, and then I got opportunity to do some of their projects for European Union in Africa. And that opened a door for me to get out of Kenya and come to Europe. And later on, I get It was at first it was just coming, doing the job, and going back. But then later on, there was a workload, and then they requested me if I can be here for some time. And I think some time ended up in a decade now, or years.
So, where you move after Kenya? Do you move straight to Netherlands or you had a stopover somewhere else?
Um, it was, I wouldn't say it was directly to the Netherlands, because I had opportunity to work for different international media houses. So I would travel to London for BBC, I would travel to US for CNN and these other media. But when I moved out of, when officially I moved here, it was first in Brussels, and then I decided to move now to Netherlands.
Before we go into different companies you work for and some of like BBC and other media partners, what exactly was the job or what is your more passion? You said, you like to work behind the camera, not in front of the camera. So how about you explain a little bit more what that means?
Yeah, it's sometimes difficult to tell people what we do, and people, if you tell somebody, for example, you work in media, then they say, but I don't see you, because they are only used to seeing the presenter, in front of a camera, or in front of their TVs. But I work different levels. So the thing is that, and this is something I always tell the youths who are interested, everybody call themselves journalists. But it's just like everybody can say, I'm a doctor. You're a doctor of what? You can even be a doctor of insects. So I started as a researcher, and a researcher is this guy who will look for stories and present them to the editor or chief editor. Then they will see, okay, this is a story, we can follow it and all that. But in the process, I realized I was also creative. So when we have programs, I will sit and say, if we do this program this way, I think it can make more sense. So that brought me to a level of being an editor. So you can be editor in terms of text, or you can be editor in terms of video. I thank God because I have a privilege of both too. So what does that brings on table? It brings a situation whereby I can script for a story, I can script for news, I can script for acting, and then at the same time edit it because I know this story. We have this talk show. I want this at the opening. I want this and that and that. So, and I grew to a level whereby I become director of programs. So director of programs is whereby you choose which program in terms of prominence go into the TV. What do we show at this particular moment? And because of when I talk about being behind the camera, I also do the technical aspect. For example, I look at where will this camera come from, this camera, and technology grew. So from the normal way of running cables and doing that, I later get to the growth of technology and get into the system whereby now we could even use technology. For example, we have products where, like, when we are what we are using now, how do we bring in those integrations? So you find some of there those short courses which gives you those skill sets. So I also did those depending on the market needs and market demands. And at some point, I was also had a privilege to be a Sony tester. So what a tester mean is when they bring a new product in the market, it's different from what the influencers that now they doing, whereby you are being given a phone and they tell you this is the best and all. No, we used to test the product based on the environment you are. So, for example, you can be given a camera and you go shoot 4 hours nonstop in a desert. They want to see how it will withstand that, and you bring back the feedback, and then they can improve on that.
Okay, so I mean, you clear a lot of things about media because for a lot of people, media is basically somebody who just sit in front of the news and that's what they call media. But there's a lot of career opportunities in media sector as a whole, from being journalist, being the editor, being the production director. There's a lot of things around how you kind of plan produce the whole story. And then there's a huge element of technical aspect at the back where the cameras and the audios and videos and post production come and play a role. So it is very easy for us to just turn on the TV and watch something, but there's a huge team working at behind the scenes to make that happen, and it's a long process. It doesn't happen in days, I would say.
Yeah, sure. I have kids who still come to me and say, I want to be a journalist. And I ask them, so who do you want to be? Journalism is big. Who do you want to be? Then they say, I want to be a newscaster. And then I turn it around and I say, do you want to be a pilot or you want to be the engineer? Or do you want to be a driver of a car or you want to be the mechanic? And then they look at, what do you mean? I tell them, like, okay, if you don't understand what you're using, then it might be difficult for you to have those in the market. So you can go and do journalism, but then later on, you will be an example of so and so is also a journalist, but you see them. Don't be an example of so and so is also a journalist and you see them because the parents don't want you to be that person because you are not a role model to the society. So what happened most of the time, I tell people a practical example. For example, years back, if you see a newscaster, somebody reading news at any particular moment, the minimum, if that person might have 5 people just to make him or her look good on TV. So, there will be director of news who make sure that they are reading the right thing, they are saying the right thing. There is a graphic designer who will run the TX, all the graphics and all that. There is an audio technician who makes sure that the audio is perfectly done well. And years back, cameraman never touch an audio. At some point, there will be a teleprompter, what we see people reading, and if they turn, they read. And then there is an editor also who tell them like, okay, you need. So you find at different moments you have, as a newscaster, you have 5 people. Now turn it the other way around. Can you do all these 5 things these people are doing if they were not there?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you see what happened years back when there was a surge in digital, when the whole media was being digitalized, we lost a lot of people because they were maybe just good in pronunciation, so they can come in, read news, and connect with people, and they are gone. But can they research their story? Can they edit the stories on their own? Can they upload their stories? Because yes, you can create a piece, but can you upload that piece so that editor have it and all that? So there is a lot happening, and what I continue to advise budding journalists or those who want to work in media, and right now it's even challenging because I see somebody, because they have a phone and they can record themselves, they call themselves journalists. Yeah, there is also ethics because there are kind of questions you need to ask someone. We nowadays lost it. Somebody is dying, and then the next thing you do is showing that video of the person. Somebody is injured into accident. Those journalism ethics doesn't allow that because remember, if you are a family member, you see such kind of a thing before somebody breaks that news to you. You are seeing it on a social media, the impact and all that. So the technology and the open market has the pros and cons, but we call ourselves as the old guards. We keep on reminding them that to be the best out of the best. Yeah,
Absolutely. I mean, it's a really honorable profession, and there's a code of conduct as a journalist. Understanding what is happening, finding the facts around it, make sure you are sharing and broadcasting the correct news and not misinformation. So there's a lot of responsibility comes because on the other side there's a lot of people watching, and based on what you say as a journalist is what people are going to make their decisions on. So it is a responsibility of the journalist to make sure sharing the right information at the right time.
very true. Yeah, because you see what is happening right now, which it's different. Sometimes I just want likes, so I want to write a story about Cam without doing my research, without even sending that story that, hey Cam, I'm writing this about you at these facts. So I just want to write whatever, so long as I will have viewers, I will have clicks, I will have bots or whatever. But journalism is I think is just like any other profession. I compared it to maybe being a medical doctor because you have microseconds to either build or break, because whatever you say can build something or it can break something. So you have to be conscious always, but also you have to be humane in whatever actions or whatever you want to say at a particular moment. So it's a noble career, and it also gives you a lot of opportunities to interact with different people understand the story. And I have a tag I always tell people that don't take a story on the face value. Know the story behind a story. So let no one comes to you and say, so and so is a thief. Yeah, there must have been a reason to why the person is being called a thief, or why the person is in that category of whatever action they are trying to refer to him.
Yeah. So going back to story behind the story, you are not a journalist anymore. You do a very different job at this point. So we will come to that, but I want to understand your journey of how you reached to where you are today. And let's start once you move out of Kenya, where you work and what was the journey like up to now.
Yeah, so, wow, it has been a journey. And I think I don't want to say I'm out of journalism. I'm still there. That's why I say it's decades. But it's just, I think, what really happens is that you find different dynamics, different ecosystem, but you are still practicing. So after moving out of Kenya, being in Europe, things were not that the best. But then, yeah, as life say, when people say when life give you lemon, you make lemonade out of it. So between 2016 and around 2017, I was doing different things. But then I got a call from someone I know who was doing some research, and he asked me, Abeka, we want to do a research for Meta by then, Facebook. They want to introduce a video uh, enabled conversation in their system. And so as I thought of how best we can engage with people one-on-one, either in the same place and broadcasting it, or a way where people join. So the concept was purely when I don't know how much you get product placement, but if you remember Skype for Business. So the concept, what the person presented to me was more of a Skype for Business. But when I thought of that, and by that I was working within the Utrecht University. So I was just like a part-time lecturer. I shouldn't say lecturer because I was dealing with students who are doing journalism, but kind of mentoring them on how to report in Africa, hostile environment areas, uh, like war-torn places, just giving them the reality on the ground and my experience of what I experienced, especially, for example, I traveled to places like Somalia where there was war and sometimes you're being attacked by the rebels, you are in the middle of it. Do you stop recording, or how do you tell that story, or do you go for cover? So then when the guy reached out, we did started the first. By then, the podcast or the talk shows were not there. So it was mostly just like an online talk show where we involve the African diaspora. But it also involved a few things. And as I said, I've always been curious to know what happens behind. So because of my knowledge on audio visual setup, so we were doing that setup where we have people joining remotely and people virtually there and engaging. So we did that until around 2018. And at the same time, I was working as a communication consultant for one of the sports apparels within Utrecht. And then they transitioned that with a software company within Europe. It's based well known. So that is when they saw what I was doing, and then they asked me how they can translate that with their different customers. And we did that for a few months. Then COVID hit. So when COVID hit, I got a call from a friend of mine and told me, "Oh, there is opportunity at Zoom, which is more or less what we used to do. Would you mind to give it a try?" And so, yeah, I gave it a try. And then that's how I transitioned from journalism to a tech kind of environment. But I used to do a lot of online conversations before, because after moving to Europe, I've set up a company, a communication company. And just to take you back a little bit, when, for example, when you work for those international media houses, people want to know, how did you get there? What are the standards? So they see you like a role model to them. But I thought it was not enough just see me as a role model. I think it will also be good if I can transfer that knowledge of what I have to the other people. So that at some point I set up a communication company called Moving Minds. So at first in Africa it was called Moving Minds Africa, and the story behind Moving Minds is like we have different mindsets and the way people see things. Because if you travel, for example, you go to a European country years back and you say you are coming from Kenya, and then somebody tells you, oh, you know what? I have a friend in Ethiopia. You might know that person. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Those are miles away. I can't, even Kenya alone, I can't know everyone. But yeah, you need to find a way. You need to find a way on how to bring these people understand that Africa is a continent with over 50 something countries. So with that, I remember one day we were with a very senior journalist who transpired me a lot. And then we had this senior person we thought knew Africa, and told us that story of he told me personally, like, oh, you must know Kipchoge Keino. You look like him, because Kipchoge was a famous athlete and all that. And so I just laugh at it and I say, in a joking way, that I get that a lot, but no, we come from 47 different tribes with some other sub tribes in between, and so the Kipchoge is coming from a totally different. So this person was so interested in knowing more, and the conversation they just derive a bit from Kipchoge and all that, and me having some geography class to teach the person about Africa and all that. And then there is when my friend and my senior say, oh, you have these moving minds. And I say, I want to do something about that mind you are talking about. So that's how the company was registered. So I was doing a lot of online training for the upcoming journalists, and also from a technical aspect, how to set up, how like big companies or big media houses like CNN, the kind of camera they use, what are the shooting methods. People tend to think, okay, I can take a camera and go, but that is different. If you are shooting a news piece, it's totally different from maybe a documentary. Yeah. And there might be a sports documentary, there might be a story of human interest documentary, whereby I want to tell you a journey. How did you move from India to where you are and all that? So I was doing those online training. So it was something I was doing, but now how to replicate that is when I joined Zoom, especially during COVID.
So you mentioned about BBC and CNN a couple of times, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners would be curious about if they are following the path of media as their career. These are one of the companies you want to work for. These are the dream companies. So how would somebody get into BBC or CNN?
Right now, I think it's easy, but for me, I give credit to my former boss who gave me the opportunity. And as I say, I was curious, so I keep on asking questions. When I first worked for a company in Africa, they were not really hiring people directly, so they were hiring them through a third party. But I remember every time I was given an opportunity to do a task, I will do it a bit extra mile. I will look at it differently. I will want, like, okay, this is the last opportunity I got. How do I deliver this? So one of the things I will tell anyone who wants to work for any international media house is that you have to set up your standard on what you want to do. Now things has changed. You can do a story piece, and the level you do it, you will find BBC reaching out, you will find CNN reaching out. It's not like our days back whereby you have to do application, you have to do a sound test. If you are an editor, you are given a job to do. If you are a cameraman, you have to go. But nowadays, you have the digital space. So set yourself there, but also do research about organizations. What are the stories they are interested in? What makes you different from another journalist? Because what I learned and what made me maybe stand out more than others, I find myself, or I call myself, a jack of all trades. If you ask me to run a cable, I will not look down upon that. That is a small job for me to do. I will run it and then ask you, what does this cable do? So I can surely tell you that I have over 30 years, but I still remember the kind of cables for you to do a simple camera work. So whether it is an audio cable, whether it is a BNC, nowadays we have optic cable and all that. So I would want to know why that and why is it called what it is called. So that curiosity will make you learn, but also be always willing to learn. Number two, maintain professionalism. So I find most of the youths nowadays, especially, they are too fast, and also they think they know it all. I have many years in media, but I still don't know some things. I still ask, and I know those who I found there, some of them I know more than they do. So you cannot know it all. But what I like about these big organizations or big international media is that the doors are open. You prove yourself, you get the opportunity.
Nice. And what is your current role, Abeka? And where are you working at the moment?
Oh, that's just I'm just coming from a long yeah. So I'm currently working at Uber, which I said I think I'm still a child at Uber. So I joined Uber, and currently as their AVAC, so audiovisual video conferencing events technician lead for the EMEA region, that is Europe, Middle East, and Africa. As you know, after COVID, a lot of things are happening, and people are moving away from in person, and now they are going more into the hybrid setup. But at the same time, people still need to work together, people still need to collaborate. So we at Uber, we are supporting almost the whole of EMEA region when it comes to meetings, when it comes to small medium sized events, but also helping in terms of content, whatever you see, whether it is video on the Uber platforms, those adverts and all that. So that's what currently we are trying to do at Uber.
You were at Zoom before. What made you switch from Zoom to Uber?
Yeah, so a lot of things, and I remain a Zoomie always because I really enjoyed working at Zoom, but that does not mean that I had to run away from Zoom. No. So the first thing which made me change from Zoom is whatever the program we were doing moved to London. So it was difficult for me also to transition to London because the program was now moved from Amsterdam to London. And then number two, it was more becoming into the in-person than the virtual, which we used to do, which was my strong background, especially when it's come to media and all that. So it's more of the products, but people want to walk in, test the products and all that. Vis-a-vis what we used to do, whereby we want to show people about the product, but also write reports and all that. So I'm still assuming, still using the product, still part of the team where I'm helping. Even what I'm doing currently is still connected with Zoom, but maybe just that I'm not physically going back to the Zoom office.
Are you still running Moving Minds Europe at the moment, along with working for Uber?
Yeah, so the the dream has never died. Currently, it's just like expanded a bit. So we still have Moving Minds Europe, which is I'm running still as a communication consultant, and I focus mostly with the African organizations which are working in Africa. But later on, I realized that I have also have contacts in Asia. So we have Moving Minds, which is covering Europe, which cover the Asia and Europe. But we have Moving Minds Africa. So one thing which Moving Minds Africa is doing currently is that I realize after the digitalization of a lot of things in Africa, we still don't have the digital literacy and access to most of the information. So what Moving Minds is doing currently, we are offering computer trainings, and we look at try to help vulnerable individuals in the society, but also we do a lot of communication and branding, because you realize somebody want to have a website, but to the level of what they do on their website, if you look at the user interaction, you look at the branding, you look at maybe even the logo. So it's the basic things we are doing. And the way we are doing it is that we train our teams, the upcoming, and then we connect them with potential employers, or they can do a freelancing job to those organizations. And we try to create job for the youth. So we don't want a situation whereby, because we have a culture whereby people just expect you to give. But what Moving Minds is doing currently is that to empower, but at the same time, not only empower them and then leave them there. So we transition them to the job creation opportunities. So we are training graphic designers, we're training video editors, we are having computer classes for those who want to advance to software, for those who want to advance. We are collaborating with different universities whereby they can work and enhance their knowledge.
How can how can somebody get in touch to Moving Mind team if they want to pursue?
So, Moving Minds, whichever you want to get in touch to, you just check the website www.movingminds. So, if you want to reach to the Europe one, it's movingmindseurope.com. If you want to reach to the Africa one, it's www.movingmindsafrica.com. But you can also, at the same time, just send an email to info at any of them, info at movingmindsafrica.com or info at movingmindseurope.com. And we have a lot of opportunities for those who will also want to volunteer, maybe just off a session, because we have students and we struggle to have internet connectivity. We really appreciate one of the telecommunications in Kenya, which gave us opportunity. So we are the first individuals to run fiber optic in a certain region, which is very remote, but so we have access. And we try also to engage the youths there, especially they come from a lakeside region where fishing, and we know things which are connected with fishing and all that. So we try also to just motivate them, tell them they can be people, and also after Form 4 or after secondary school, what next. So we also advise them on a career path depending if they choose.
Okay, and you mentioned about journalism. So outside of Uber, are you still doing any kind of journalism?
Yeah, so outside of that, I'm still doing, I think that's why I said I never stop to be. It's just that now I'm concentrating with a few tech terms. Yeah, but I'm still doing journalism. So I'm involved, for example, I'm involved with a newspaper here in Europe called the Voice magazine, where I contribute. But I'm also still training upcoming journalists. I also do content writing. So I write for different organizations, but I find myself, I specialize mostly, or I think it's more of where I find so interest about is more on communication strategies, because I see organizations sometimes struggling a lot in terms to how to communicate, even big corporates. So it's something which I decided to venture in. I did my master's and to just expand, and I thought there was a space there. So I'm consulting for different organizations on communication and communication strategies.
At the very last, Abeka, I usually ask my guests to give a message to the audience, and based on your experience traveling around pretty much the world, living and growing up in South, African countries, and then moving now to Europe. From a media, from a journalist perspective, what message do you want to give it to?
Yeah, one thing people don't understand that you are special in one way, and until you appreciate how special you are, it doesn't matter where you come from. You can come from any part of the world, but there is one thing which is constant in us. We are all human beings, and let where you come from never define you. Find a purpose, and that is the most important thing. What is your purpose of being where you are? And so long as you discover that purpose, then there is happiness into it. You will realize that you enjoy what you are doing. You will realize that you are always happy, because I believe happiness is like a mirror. Try this one day. If you happen to watch this episode of today, smile one day on the street and then just write down or just memorize how many people smile back at you. But then do the opposite one day. Walk on the street and frown and look down. You will see how many people look at you like, what's wrong with him? So that's how you are. That's your purpose. That's how you can transmit that happiness, because 90% of your time is all about happiness. We all have our problems, but the moment we concentrate on our problems, we lose A problem might be just 1%. But when we concentrate into the problem side, we lose the 99% of the happiness or the good things. And that's why you find in a human nature, we only remember one problem or one bad thing you did, and we forget the 99 good ones you have done for people. So if we focus on the remain with the 99 and back in our mind, there is 1% which is not good and there is nothing we can do about, we will be happy. So each and everyone has a call, each of everyone has a potential. You just need to find a way, discover who you are, and enjoy. Enjoy. I give practical example with footballers. We enjoy all sports, any kind of sport. How many years of training do we do for only to go and run maybe 1 or 2 hours in Olympic? Yeah. And everybody wants to run. If it is 100 meters, only one person will get a gold. Yeah, not everybody participated. So it's the commitment, it's the happiness, it's the enjoyment you get. But remember, we celebrate the success as a group, but the work sometimes is being done as an individual.
You touched base on the purpose. It's very easy to say, find a purpose, but a lot of people take years or I would say decades to find the purpose. It is not easy to find what's the purpose of you. Do you have any method or any way of somebody to explore and see what would be my purpose?
It's interesting question because what happens is sometimes we tend to think my purpose of being around or doing what I'm doing is because of survival or because of the success or because of the money. But I will tell you one thing. If you want to discover your purpose, think of that thing you always do, and sometimes you even fail, but you will never stop. You will tomorrow try and say, okay, I did it up to this point. Why did I reach here? Now I'm going to do it differently. That is your purpose. So if it is about advising people, you find you keep on advising and you see they change. Sometimes they don't appreciate, sometimes they appreciate, but you find there is fulfillment in you. That is your purpose. If it's about talking, training, or just even in the career, if your manager give you a certain job, it takes you ages to do it. But a particular job, when you are given, you are easy. You just do it very fast. I remember as a child, my uncle wanted me to be a lawyer. And I've seen individuals say, you could have been a good doctor. But I think I have a purpose, and my purpose was just journalism. Because if you put me into ask somebody a question, they end up talking things they have never told someone, and then they end up asking, how did you manage to put me into that position and get all that information? I've never shared that information with someone. So I think sometimes we discover our purpose at an early stage, but also sometimes we are driven by the passion, and that passion is what the purpose which is you have.
Yeah, that is so true, Abeka. And with that, we'll come to the end. I truly appreciate you sharing your story and your wisdom of your experience over the years. And I hope to see you in person someday in Netherlands. But keep the journalism going, keep teaching the next generation and the youth with the same passion. And I believe your passion is bring the journalism to the next level. So keep doing what you're doing, and thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity. And for our viewers who will watch this episode, I hope you get inspired, you enjoy, and thank you for the good job you are doing, giving the platforms. And I think you're doing a great job. You are really doing a great job. And this is your purpose, this is your call. Continue doing it.
That's good. Great.
Yeah, thank you very much.